Hello YouTube, this is DasGregor and welcome back to a Gentoo in review. Today is going to be a short, quick review on a subject about SD card readers in Gentoo. It was not my planned subject, but I had a network outage, an internet outage with my provider, and that kind of hosed most all of my evening with being able to have internet access to get to certain areas that I wanted to do for my other review. So without further ado, here let's go on. One of the first things you're going to want to do when setting up an SD card reader is build your kernel modules. If we look at my list of modules that I have currently set up, you will see that I have the MMC block, the SDHCI, and the MMC core. Those are the 3 or 4 most important drivers needed for using the SD card. Now, to start with your kernel, you want to go to the user source Linux directory, which we're already in. I'm not going to use my build script because I've already built this out. I'm just going to show you what needs to be enabled. So we do a make menu config. That'll bring up our little GUI interface to the kernel. And we go into device drivers. We're going to be looking for the MMC SD card area. So we scroll down here till we get to here. Now you'll notice that I've got it set up as a module. And if we look at the help, you'll see that this is giving us our main MMC core option. We go in here, and like I said, if you're unfamiliar with which driver you think your reader or device needs, it's best to set it up at first with all modules. In this case, there's not that many to try, and it's not that hard to go ahead and build those. Now, the big things that you're going to make sure is you want to make sure your MMC block device is set up. If we look at the help, it shows what the config is going to be. And your secure digital host controller and PCI bus controller for those. Now, down here, I've gone ahead and, like I said, set up these other modules just in case. Once you've turned those on, that's all you really need to do in your kernel. You're going to exit out, and at this point when you hit exit, if this is new, it's going to ask you if you want to save your config file, which you'll let it do, and then you'll exit. And as it says here, execute make to start the build. So you do make, hit enter, and it compiles the kernel. And then after it compiles, you do the make modules _install, which will install your modules. Now, if you're setting up your modules manually, you'll need to add them to the modules directory inside of etc conf.d modules. And if we look at mine, you'll notice that the only thing I really have set up is VBoxDRV, VBoxNetFLT, and VBoxNetADP. Those are for VirtualBox. I have most of my modules set up to auto-load upon detection at boot up. So I don't have a need to actually specify my modules inside of here. But if your system is completely manual and you do not have modules set up to auto-load on boot up, then this is where you'd need to put those module names. After you've inserted those module names, you can reboot into your new kernel, and you should see when you do an ls mod up here, MMC block, MMC core, SDHCI, and SDHCI_PCI listed. If, however, you do a /dev and you look for new devices thinking there ought to be something there, and actually right now there is because I have my SD card mounted, but if I was to unmount my SD card just to show you what you should see. Yeah. There we go. Then we eject my SD card for now. And we do another ls-dev. You should notice that there is nothing in here for the MMC. And this is what you will see without the SD card inside the slot. One thing you'll want to set up if you want to be able to mount easily your SD card is in your FS tab. And if we look at my example FS tab, which is an etc FS tab, mine's example so that I hide some of my IPs, you'll see that dev/mmc block 0p1 for partition 1 I have set up to go to mount MMC. The operating system is auto because it might be CFS, or not CFS, it may be FAT32, it might be EXT3, I never know, so I just set it up as auto. I don't like my SD card to automatically mount because sometimes I may just want to work with the partitions, so I have no auto. I always want to mount it read-write, and I give permission to the users so that I don't have to be a root user to mount the device. So I pop that back in there. You should see where it pops up here. I get an error with my sound because I've got my screen recording right now, but it pops up and it detects it. And if we do an ls/dev again, we now see the block devices for MMC, which shows that it did actually detect the SD card. If we mount my SD card and we do a list of that, we can see that there are actually files on there, and we can read and write them and do whatever we need to do to manage that SD card. Quick, simple, easy, but for many years when I first got this laptop, I could not get the SD card reader to work. So that's something within the last 6 months that I think the kernel must have built and made to work. Now once you have set all this stuff up, you can use lspci-v, and that gives you, of course, I must have used a bad character, lspci-v. That gives you a verbose listing of all your PCI hardware. Now this one I know, for instance, is 500.2 and .1. So if we look at that, we see that there's my SDMMC host controller. We also can see that the kernel driver in use is the SDHCI-PCI, and the kernel module SDHCI_PCI. Now, if you had set up your system to automatically look for modules and hardware and load them, if you didn't know that that was the right one, it would automatically load it, and you could look in here and it would tell you then which one it is. That gives you the opportunity then, if you wanted to clean up your kernel, go back into it and get rid of those extra modules that you don't need, to just have the ones that are required. A good thing to look at. So as I said, this is actually going to be very short. Thank you for watching. If it's morning, evening, noon, or night, whatever you're having, enjoy it. Thanks for the views. Thanks for the comments. Keep watching. This Friday I will have another first impressions, and I will be trying to, I believe it's Slitaz. I think that's how you say it. That one has been a little bit of a challenge. It's going to be an awkward distribution because of some issues that I had with it, but I do have it working well enough to do somewhat of a talk about it. So until then, thank you again, as I said, for watching, your comments, everything else. Have a good night, evening, morning, whatever you're doing when you're watching this. Enjoy. I'm repeating myself. Auf Wiedersehen. Tschüss. Arrivederci. Bye.